My friends, I have an important question for you. Lately, I have been releasing some videos and also written articles that do touch the questions of role of the prophets in the situations which did not necessarily end well. This has simply led me to a question that I want to ask you today. What do you think? Can a true prophet err? Can a true prophet make a mistake under inspiration, claiming that God has spoken, and then that prophecy and claim turns into something else? We are living today in a flourishing culture of millions of prophets. There are other denominational prophets or a growing number of self-proclaimed prophets in the so-called prophetic movements that major on the supposed necessity almost for everyone to prophesy about everything and anything and something. And this is nudging me to talk about this question today. So, can a prophet or a prophetess declare a questionable prophecy or a false statement claiming a special revelation, either about the last days events, political matters, or private matters, or anything else, and then change his or her mind, either by editing out later the embarrassing parts, or simply by deleting a prophecy completely that failed to materialize? Can a prophet announce his or her message, claiming the powerful signature tune, "Thus saith the Lord," and then later edit or change the content of the message the Lord has supposedly spoken? Initially, a prophet has made a big fuss about something, for example, prophesying about a previous US president, only to delete the same prophecies once having realized their prophecies failed. By the way, there are many of those. Some argue that actually this is all right, that the Bible provides evidences to that end. They like to mention the Old Testament prophet Nathan, who reversed his initial affirmation of David's intention to build a temple after being instructed otherwise by the Lord. But in this particular case, Nathan's first response to David's plan was not a prophetic announcement. Only when the Lord visited Nathan with a clear instruction that David should not build a temple, Nathan's response to David became a prophetic one. In other words, Prophet Nathan did not act under special revelation twice about the same matter, contradicting his later statement with the earlier one. Others like to mention the case of the prophet Jeremiah, when he produced a revised version of the Lord's instruction meant for the king Jehoiakim, with some new additions, after the angry king Jehoiakim burned the first original edition of the prophecy. It might appear that under extraordinary circumstances, Jeremiah had to come with two editions of the same prophecy, with the later one adding some new elements to the first one. Some would argue that this represented a change in the message. However, a careful examination of the situation would lead us to understand that Jeremiah did not change or modify or obliterate his original message to the king. The second edition only complemented it with some new, extended, but not contradictory materials. The words used might have been somewhat different the second time, but the message remained the same. Whichever view of inspiration of prophets and their messages you may have, my friends, we need to keep in mind that in order for the Lord's message to be truthfully and meaningfully conveyed to his messenger or prophet, we are left with only a tiny hole for human maneuvering, certainly not big enough to smuggle the elephants of plagiarism, confusing theological inconsistencies, far-stretched claims, the unfulfilled prophecies, or vague or contradicting statements. Otherwise, how would one ever know with certainty that the message or a revelation or other information from heaven has ever reached the targeted audience in a trustworthy, reliable, and accurate manner, so that at the end of the day, we may conclude with certainty that the Lord has spoken indeed. What I'm trying to suggest is that within the framework of a prophetic calling, there remains only a limited space for human coloring. Once the identifying signature, "Thus said the Lord," or "I saw," or "the Lord told me," or "the Lord has shown me," or "the Lord gave me a dream," has been broadcast, there remain possibly only two mutually exclusive outcomes. Either the Lord has spoken in no misleading terms, or the prophet has spoken lies. No middle or compromising option is possible there where a special revelation is claimed. There will be simply something wrong if a prophet would say, "The Lord has spoken for sure, but I must not have got it right the first time. I thought it meant something else." So let me explain further. There is a world of difference between the ministry of a prophet and the ministry of a church pastor. If a pastor apologizes one day from the pulpit for having formally misunderstood or mispreached certain aspects of the Word of God, this gesture could even be interpreted as a sign of his maturity, humility, honesty, and respect for the revealed Word of God. This is because a balanced minister would never claim the gift of a special revelation. In his or her case, inspiration works through the ongoing spirit-led process of learning and unlearning when necessary. On the other hand, in the case of a prophet who has an advantage, to put it like this, over a pastor, in that he or she handles the means of direct inspiration, direct communication with the Lord, through special means of revelation, speaking with the Lord face to face, all kinds of updating, correcting, revising, revisiting, and admittances of mistakes would soon become a serious problem rather than a virtue. The claim, "Thus saith the Lord," makes the whole world of difference. For the prophet's source of information does not come from the spirit-led process of learning and unlearning, but from a direct revelation. The Lord has spoken, as they claim. While in the pastoral ministry, between the two extremes, there is always room for another option, which is honest misunderstanding, which ultimately leads to correction. In the case of the prophetic ministry, the claim to a direct revelation makes such an option a dangerous luxury. Prophet Jeremiah calls the manipulating, mind-changing, and shifty prophets liars. He has some very strong words of warning for the prophet who speak presumptuously. He says, "Therefore declares the Lord, I am against the prophets who steal from one another words supposedly from me. Yes, declares the Lord, I am against the prophets who wag their own tongues and yet declare, the Lord declares. Indeed, I am against those who prophesy false dreams, declares the Lord, and lead my people astray with their reckless lies. Yet I did not send them nor appoint them. They do not benefit those people in the least, declares the Lord." You can find those words of warning registered in the book of Prophet Jeremiah in chapter 23, verses 30 up to verse 32. And by the way, Jeremiah has many warnings concerning the false prophets of his days, but also of our own days, even more so. So, my friends, a true prophet can err just like anyone else. But once he or she attaches the powerful signature tune, "Thus saith the Lord," or "the Lord has shown me," "the Lord told me," his or her announcement should better be followed up by as few surprises as possible. In fact, they should stand the test of truthfulness under any circumstances, without a necessity for a manipulative modification or a correction or apology. Otherwise, such a prophet is not a prophet at all, but a lying charlatan and a deceiver. So, my friends, mind the prophets, lest you be deceived. And tragically, today, millions of Christians are already deceived by contemporary prophets.